Hello again. Welcome to another episode of Leading from Alignment with our good friend, John Beluski. And as promised, back for episode number 243, Pastor Greg Surratt. How are you today, fellas?
Good.
Hey, Jim, we're doing well. Doing well. Good to be together with you all again. Greg, thanks for
Yeah,
giving us some more of your time. If you didn't hear episode 242, we'd encourage you to hit pause on
please.
this one, go back to 242 before you listen to this one. Greg Surratt is the founding pastor of Seacoast Church in South Carolina, also co-founder of ARC, the Association of Related Churches. And I think maybe by divine appointment, God has put our paths together. And it's been really a wonderful experience to become friends with Greg over the last couple of years. We've been working on some projects together, and it's
Yeah,
been a lot of fun. So, Greg, thanks for being back for another round with us.
Thanks, John. And it really has. I thank God for bringing you in my life and some exciting projects we're working on right now that I think are going to help a lot of people.
Yeah, is it okay if I just share real quick
Why not?
what we've been working on together? So we've been working on it for a while, how to get pastors who are coming through the retreat at Church Creek into cohort groups, and it's taken us a little while to figure that out. And we launched that for real about 4 weeks ago, and we have, I think, over 60 pastors and groups already.
all
And
right.
I'm so excited to see that, and I think there's a lot more coming ahead. So that's the thumbnail version of what we've been working on together for a while. And so, Greg, in 242, we were talking about, got to know you a little bit, your conversion story, and that was interesting, and your call. Remember you saying the first couple of times I met you, I think that you wanted to be a rock star, and how I just love the story. But we spent most of the time in 242 talking about um, what's going on in the lives of pastors. And
Yeah,
you've had a bird's eye view over the last, well, for a long time you have, but at the retreat, for the last few years, you've had time with a couple thousand pastors. And so you were sharing with us what you're seeing in regards to burnout and some of the signs that a pastor may be burning out. I believe this, it's easier to prevent burnout than it is to recover from it. So it's good to know that there are some things we can be paying attention to, some warning lights on the dashboard. We talked about tiredness or cynicism, grief, uh, the wondering, are we making a difference? Things like that. One of the things that I notice in my own world is I know I'm starting to move toward burnout when my irritability level
Mhm.
is out of whack,
yeah,
or things that I used to really enjoy just aren't putting wind in my sails anymore. And so I think what I'd like to do today, if it's okay with you guys, is talk about maybe a little solutioning here around um, let's talk about burnout. Like, Greg, from your perspective, how can we come alongside? Now, we know that burnout's an issue. We think about 42% of pastors experience it at some level. How do we come alongside pastors and help them address maybe those contributors that we were talking about? Like,
yeah,
what are some answers to, and maybe we could talk on the preventive side a little bit, and maybe we can
Mhm.
talk on the uh, curative side as well, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Could you just give us some of your thinking on that?
Yeah. Let me let me give just a couple of different directions. I mean, your directions, but a couple of different directions with that. The first one that I think is important. Uh, uh, well, when we began to study how do you help pastors through burnout, and we're not the only ones studying that. I mean, there's some people
Right.
throwing some significant dollar
mm,
in studying the issue because it's huge. Can you imagine
yeah,
if um, nearly half of the pastors in America quit? Okay,
mm,
I don't know that that's going to happen, but the burnout thing says that they're thinking about it. And here's what's
yeah,
interesting is the younger they get, the higher the burnout number.
That's
Okay.
right.
mm,
42% is like that's the number. But when it gets to pastors in their 40s, it's like 47, 48%, something like that. And so what we're saying is um, the next generation of leaders and pastors in America are highly at risk. What's that going to do to churches? What's it going to do to families? What's it going to do to our country? So a lot of people are studying it. One group, Boston University, I think it was, said that there's three things that it's going to take: retreats, where you just have that's almost like an immediate triage. Let's get them out, get them away, and let's deal with issues right there. So retreats, cohorts, and resources, those three things. And I think everybody that's dealing in this area is focusing on one or more of those. I know that we're trying to figure out all three of them. But in a retreat setting, what you do is you get away. And hey, by the way, nobody thinks they have time. Yeah. And if you make a commitment to come to a retreat, there's going to be something that's going to come up last minute, without a doubt. There's just going to be. And but in a retreat setting, you get an immediate injection of stress-free living. And and so that's very, very important. Plus an immediate injection of relationship, which is another piece of it. But it's not enough. We've got to follow that up. And I always talk to the guys about rhythms of rest that you need. And I won't give a whole teaching on that, but I see five rhythms of rest that we need in our life if we're going to, live well, finish strong. We've got to have a daily rest with the Lord. And we have a whole process in the cohort system that we have put together and are putting together that is really amazing on that. You need a weekly rest. You wouldn't believe, maybe you would, John, maybe you guys would believe that. How many guys, when I say, how many of you take a day off every week? Just raise your hand. How many take a day off? Oh, it's way less than half.
Hey,
I do.
Greg, I was talking to a pastor this morning. It's been 7 months.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
I had a day off in 7 months.
Oh.
Yeah. And so we teach that. How do you do that? What do you do it effectively? You need a quarterly rest with your spouse. Okay. Once a quarter, get away. Don't bring the kids. That's a trip. That's not a rest. And then you need a yearly rest. And especially when you're in a small church, what I say is, you need 3 weeks, 3 weekends in a row. Okay. And a small church pastor looks at me like, are you crazy? And we teach them how to do that. You can do it. You can do it. And then you need a sabbatical rest every 7 years. Just get away. And I've done a video. I haven't released it yet. I'm going to, on why every church needs to give a pastor a sabbatical. I was sitting down with a church board one time, very, very large church. And I was going through these principles with the church board. And a very successful business guy said, wow, he said, I should have been a pastor if I could get all this amount of time off. And I thought, oh, okay, I'm coming after you. And so I did a video that is Harvard sourced and all of this kind of thing on why you need that. But that's, that's the rest side. And then on Chip Judd and I wrote a book called The Endurance Factor, how ministry leaders can avoid burnout, live well, and finish strong. And it's one of the chapters, chapter 6 in there, is gold. It's absolute gold. And that's what we've based our cohort. We're going to do a 120-day sprint, 4-month cohort out of basically chapter 6, which are 4 meta skills that will help you avoid burnout. And that's a whole nother deal. But anyway, I can talk forever, as you guys know.
Yeah, we want to just highlight that book, The Endurance Factor. Amazing content. I've been a personal recipient several times of chapter 6 in a retreat setting. And every time, Greg, I think 3 times I've been through it. This last time we were training facilitators for the cohorts, but we experienced it again. And I learned something new every time. I believe that those 4 meta skills have the ability to change the world. I really do. I don't think that's an overstatement, that if we got those right, our lives would be so much better.
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree. And I wish, it's my dream that every pastor on the planet could get the book, get in a cohort, and just learn some of the principles. And you say, well, yeah, if I wrote a book, I'd want everybody to get it too. We gave away the profits on this thing, to the retreat and pastors collective to do it. So it's not about a moneymaker for me, but I believe strongly in the principles. Now, let me give you the meta skills. You want to go through that?
If you can,
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, real quick, that'd be awesome, Greg.
Yeah. The first one is finding your band of brothers or sisters. It's so important. I have said for years that every leader needs to sit at least one table with a group of friends who love you but are not impressed with you and will tell you the truth.
Yeah.
And that's what a band of brothers or sisters do. They love you, but they're not impressed with you. Your church is impressed with you. They should be. I hope you live a life, that they aspire to. And I don't care how much you go, well, don't put me up on a pedestal. You're on a pedestal. You preach on one every week. All right. And I'm not telling you to tear that down. Not at all. But you need a group around you that love you. They're not impressed with you, and they'll tell you the truth. So finding your band of brothers and sisters, how do you do that? The second meta skill is developing a conversational relationship with God through journaling. Chip has some gold on that. It's just amazing. It'll blow your mind. And the journaling stuff is amazing. And you think you know what journaling is, that's all right. But this is, we call it journaling on steroids. Okay.
Yeah.
And then number 3 is going to God, learning to go to God first and most for everything that we need. Chip has a saying that I love. I've adopted it as my own. If I say it 5 more times, I'll just say I created it. But he says, I want you to like me. I want you to love me, but I don't need you to. Okay. I don't need you to like me. I don't even need you to love me. And the point is developing some system, some relationship where that you go to God first and let him fill up your cup so that there's an overflow. Okay. Yep. And then the 4th meta principle we call detoxing your soul by killing your ants. And that's not Aunt Margaret or, that's ANTS, automatic negative thoughts. And Chip calls it sanctified psychology. And it's what saved my life 40 years ago in ministry when I was so depressed and knew no way out. And, the Bible says that we're to take captive every thought. And that's so hard when you're depressed and discouraged and all of that.
Yep.
But we have a system of capture, take captive, question, and then replace the thoughts with the truth. And so those are 4 meta principles, meta skills, not just principles, that I do think will change your life.
So if I can just speak to that, before I knew those things, I walked into a meeting the other day with 3 other staff members that constitute basically the senior staff of the church. And they're dealing with some pretty heavy things. I can feel that when I walk in the room. While they're talking, I get 2 texts. One is that a friend has committed suicide, and I share that with the group. The other one is a friend has just been dismissed from the ministry for a violation of a moral thing. And it's getting worse. So my wife says to me, she's in the room, she says, okay, would you like to, we're going to close out in prayer. And I said, I'm sorry, I've just got another text from another friend. I said, go ahead, and I'll stop what I'm doing and we'll pray. This was her prayer. And it was, remember, there's 4 people in the room. We're all weighed down, million pounds of life. And she said, okay, well, dear God, help.
Mm-hmm.
And we all said amen and burst out laughing.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it was in that moment, but I texted them all later individually. I said, I'm grateful that no matter how hard life can get, that we shared that burden together. And I believe our prayer was sincere. I'm not saying we laughed
Mm-hmm.
about the situation.
No.
There's nothing funny about it, but that we all felt the same thing. And then we all felt the same sense of, we're not alone. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that band of brothers thing. We're not alone. We're in this
Yep.
together. And we all went home and spent time with our families and ate dinner and came back ready to work again the next day. And I just want to applaud those 4 things. That one for sure means a lot to me, that whenever there's a bad day, I'm not alone, because that's a lie. That's an insidious lie that will be,
It is.
It'll cause a lot of harm in your life. Can I ask another question here, Greg? How are we doing for time? John, we got 5,
Yeah,
10
I
more
think,
minutes.
yeah, like we got time for
Yeah.
one more. Yeah.
You mentioned in pod 242 that you've been a pastor of a mega church, and at this season of life, and you've been a pastor of a smaller church at another season of life, and that the smaller church was harder. I remember when the church was smaller, coming back from my 2 weeks of vacation, one Sunday, but 2 weeks, and I'd be writing the message, bouncing. I had to get the sermon done because I'd write it out before we got to Michigan. You could write it in Ohio, but the potholes in Michigan prevent. You had to have the gift of interpretation to read your handwriting once you hit Michigan. The border there. But I remember feeling that knot in my stomach, and my palms would begin to sweat. The relaxation that I'd enjoyed was gone. It's almost like and you described it too, the getting away. They used to do that with bomber crews in World War II, like get them into huddles, get them to a safe place, get them sane enough to go back and try to bomb the Nazis again. And I feel that same way. So we have a young generation. The younger they are, you said, the more in crisis, the more acute the crisis is. What do you say to that? John and I were 29 when we first started pastoring and senior pastoring our first church. What do you say to the young guy that doesn't have decades of knowing there's ebbs and flows and seasons? People do come and people do leave. What would you say to them? What would you say to your 20-year-old, 29-year-old version of yourself now that you know what you know?
Yeah. And that's one of them, what you just said there. People come and people go. And if you stay long enough, they come back.
Yeah.
Same
Yeah,
ones.
they do. Yeah.
And
some you didn't even want to come back. That's
exactly.
how,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let's stop that. But I know we're not going to stop that, but we're going to talk about it. I'd love to. There's 2 or 3 things along that line. There's a book written that says, don't sweat the small stuff. Everything's small stuff. And somebody last week, they were at some kind of a deal. I don't remember where it was, but with some young pastors. And somebody said, had a couple pastors stand up and said, tell us what you preached about 2 weeks ago. And none of them could remember exactly what it was. And they said, you can't remember. Can you imagine your people? They have no clue. And we put so much pressure. This has got to be the best service ever. Yeah. It's going to be the best sermon ever. And by the time they get to the parking lot, now I don't want to belittle the transforming power of Jesus. And I believe every time we gather together, God is in our midst and he does amazing things. But it's not all up to you and not all up to me. We've even changed our whole worship style about 15 years ago, where we do a response time at the end, because I used to give altar calls and nobody answered them. I'm terrible at altar calls, just terrible. And so I set it up where we've now got an altar call for everybody. It's like at the end of the service, we say, what's God saying to you? What are you going to do about it? Do it. And so everybody does something, and it's just amazing. And I talk to our young pastors and I say, one of the reasons I put that in is to take the pressure off me. The message doesn't even have to be that good. All I got to do is get them into God's presence. And it's an amazing week. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves and pressure on our teams, and it's all got to be perfect, and it's all got to be right. And I believe in excellence. I just want to tell you that. But it's, it's not that big of a deal. And people come, people go, and enjoy the journey as
Yeah.
best you can. Develop. There's a newer stream of psychology that's positive psychology, and they're studying flourishing. Human flourishing is the buzzword right now, and there are some activities that you can do that will enhance flourishing, as opposed to some of the things that we've been talking about, and most of them are biblical. It's like, have a habit of gratitude. That's Paul tells the Thessalonians, give thanks in all things. A habit of gratitude, acts of service. They have studies on how all of this stuff. Actually, attending church. People that attend church are happier, measurably than not. And then here's one that church planners need. I don't remember the name of it. I need to get it, but it's almost ruminating on what went right. And it's different than
I
gratitude.
like that.
Gratitude is like how I can be thankful for the junk that goes on, or the life that I have, or whatever. But we don't stop to go, you know what? That went right, and I was a part of that.
Yeah.
That's good.
For a while.
Celebration.
We see everything wrong. Yeah, celebration. We see everything wrong. If you're a pastor, you see everything that went wrong. You come home and tell your wife she's tired of listening to it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what went right. Yeah.
I think that's the default setting, isn't it? You stand at the door and 100 people say, good sermon, good sermon. One guy comes and says, I think you're a heretic. And for some reason, we go home with that guy.
Oh, yeah.
In our hearts.
Oh, he comes home with us in our head. That's for sure.
Yeah. But to have that practice of, I'm sorry you feel that way. This is a battle, but this is not the war. There's 1,000 battles in the war. And let's not make every battle like it's the whole war. It's you win battles, you lose battles, but we'll win the war.
We're going to win. We are winning.
Yeah. Yes, we are.
And Greg, I know we're really up against time, but this last thing about ruminating on what's right.
Yeah.
What do you see that's encouraging to you in the church today? What's encouraging you as you look at things?
Oh man, there's so much. Just young leaders. I am so impressed with the passion, the dedication, and the talent of young leaders coming up. I really am. The church of the future is in good hands. I hear about, how young people are leaving the church, and there's some validity to some of the statistics to that. But I want to tell you something. There are young leaders that are primed and equipped to stop that flow. And I'm very, 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 very encouraged by that. I also believe that there's a hunger, especially in the next generation, for God's word. There really is. They want to dig deep into God's word. I got 14 grandkids, and I've got 2 of them that are 16 years old. This is one anecdote. So I was going to take my 16-year-old granddaughter out for lunch. We were going to talk a theological thing that she's dealing with at school. Go to a Christian school, and there's a Bible teacher that's teaching something different than what she thinks is, and so she wants Papa to help her, bring in the big gun here. And so I happened to see my 16-year-old grandson when I was going to pick her up, and he was getting ready to go do something with his girlfriend. And I said, Miles, you want to come to eat with us? Addison, he said, oh, Papa, I would love to. I'm going to do something with my girlfriend, whatever. He said, what are you going to be doing? I said, we're going to talk a little theology. He says, I'll call her. I'm coming with you.
Wow.
Ditched his girlfriend because he wanted to talk about, and I don't think they're an anomaly. And it's not like they're super Christian kids or whatever. They're just really, really curious. What does the Bible really say? How do you know it says that? And to me, I love that. I'm very optimistic about the future.
Yeah. That's good to hear, because we've talked a lot about the changing landscape of the church, that it's harder and harder to find a youth pastor. It's harder and harder to find a kids pastor or people that serve in those roles, because ministry is not, it used to be respected. Now it's a little bit more suspected in a cultural way. But I agree. I see the same thing. It's the 16-year-olds, the 26-year-olds, they're finding it. The 16-year-olds, it's almost like they're born with it. That passion and that curiosity. Nothing against 26-year-olds. I'm not saying that, but
there's so little against 26-year-olds, I know.
Yeah. Well, if you thought it was like a downward trajectory, it isn't. There's more of a EKG going on than a stock market chart. It really is interesting.
I'm looking at least you guys are, I'm older than you guys by a little bit, but you can remember when America was going to hell in a handbasket in the 60s, drugs, sex, rock and roll. And it wasn't good. And there were riots on campuses, and they were burning down cities, and, racial stuff was, the things that were being approved were terrible. And then came a revival. Yeah. And we're the product of that.
We are.
I think we're set up for that now. So,
and I love the thought of that 16-year-old and that 26-year-old seeing that. Most of my older friends went to work one day and came home born again. It was just happening in the shop and at the job and in the army and at the school. And there was just people were almost saved. They just didn't know it yet. During that time, it was beautiful. Yeah. Love that. How are we doing for time, John? Are we done?
You got to wrap us up, Jim. We're over, but that's okay. It's been really good.
Can I have 90 seconds about the retreat, though? The Church Creek?
Yeah. We'd love to hear that, Greg. Tell us a little bit about that.
I want to go. Tell me what I'm going to.
Yeah, we've got 66 acres, actually 110 acres, because some people next door let us use their land too. On the water in Charleston, South Carolina, absolutely beautiful. It's kind of fun. Pastors come, they have no idea what they're getting into. They think they're going to a middle school campground, and they're going to sleep on, sleeping bags on terrible mattresses. It's amazing. It is beautiful, first-class experience. And you come, you meet some other guys or girls. We have men's retreats, women's retreats, and all kinds of. We catch fish. We ride bikes. We play a little pickleball. We do all kinds of fun things. But the main thing we do is relax, get some peace, connect with some brothers and sisters. We sit down at a table at night. We open up our hearts to one another, and we do a survey at the end. And 51% say that it's life-changing. A total of 97% say it's either life-changing or extremely, extremely helpful. And so I wish they'd had one when I was in the trenches. That's for sure.
How would somebody connect to that if they wanted to know more about this or participate in one? Is it by invitation only, or do you apply for it, or
pastorscollective.com? There's the hat, Pastors Collective. pastorscollective.com. There's a section on the website. I think it's called Rest. You click on that, and it talks about the retreat, and you can see how to get involved.
Love it. I love the idea. I love your heart for it. Thank you for everything you do. We, like John said in the previous episode, we saw you in Michigan in January, and it still resonates. I still quote you, although I'm starting to claim your quotes more as my own now, because I've said it more than 5 times. And I think that's the rule. It's not plagiarism anymore. It's research at some point.
That's it.
So I did my research, but, and same thing with us, right, John? If they want to get a hold of us, convergecoach.com. And there's a bunch of ways. And I think the thing that I know most about the men that are on this right now is nobody's in this because we felt like it. Nobody's in this because we thought it'd be the shortest road to money and fame. We're here because there's something God's put in our hearts for pastors, for leaders. And it would be an honor to continue to serve in this relationship in any way that we could serve you. So please take these things we made available and use them. Play with them loudly, like Christmas morning. Every gift that God, gives us, may we open it up and play with it loudly to his delight. That is the child's job. So we love you. We're praying for you, Greg. John, thanks so much for all your wisdom and heart for this. And And we all know, that God's got good things in store for all of us as we continue to lead from alignment.